I never thought I'd be the kind of person to share something like this, but what happened turned my entire world upside down. It all started so quietly, so harmlessly, like most betrayals do. If you had told me a year ago that my life would take such a strange, painful turn because of my step-grandson, I would have laughed it off. But what happened, what really happened, is something I still struggle to make sense of. And I think it's time I tell the truth. I married my husband a few years after losing my first partner. He was kind, supportive, and had a big family. I didn't have children of my own, so being accepted into his world felt like a gift. His grandkids, especially, brought life back into me. They'd come over on weekends, birthdays, holidays. It felt like the family I'd always wanted. Among them was Caleb, his eldest grandson from his daughter's side. He was in his mid-20s, polite, charming, and always willing to help around the house. I thought of him as family. I really did. At first, it was small things. Conversations that felt a little too personal. Compliments that lingered in my mind longer than they should have. I brushed it off. I mean, what else could it be? He was young, I was older, we were practically from different worlds. Besides, he was my step-grandson. It never crossed my mind that anything inappropriate could be brewing. I honestly believed I was imagining things. But then, things started to shift. Caleb began dropping by when my husband wasn't home. Said he was just in the neighborhood, or needed to borrow something. It didn't feel weird at first. I was glad to see him. But his visits got more frequent, and the way he looked at me? It was like he saw something I didn't see in myself anymore. I kept trying to convince myself it was nothing, that I was overthinking. But a part of me, a quiet, nervous part, knew something wasn't right. I confided in a friend one day, not giving too many details, just asking if it was normal to feel uncomfortable around someone you've known for years. She told me to trust my gut. So I did. I started keeping my distance. I told Caleb I was busy when he called. I made excuses when he showed up. And then, everything exploded. My husband found something. A message. A photo. I won't go into details, but it was enough to make him question everything. He didn't come to me right away. Instead, he asked Caleb. And what Caleb said shocked both of us. My heart was racing when I heard my husband confront me. He was confused, hurt, and furious, and I didn't even know what had been said yet. I kept saying I didn't understand, that there had to be a mistake. But nothing could have prepared me for what Caleb told him. Nothing could have prepared me for the moment I realized that my entire marriage, my place in this family, was hanging by a thread because of something I didn't even do. That moment, when trust was broken, when everything fell apart, that's the moment that changed everything. And what came after was even worse. I thought it couldn't get any more painful. I thought once the truth came out, things would settle, that the lies would be cleared. But the truth is, what happened next left me completely shaken. Betrayal doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes, it comes from the people you let closest to your heart. And just when I thought it was over, Caleb did something I never saw coming, something that still keeps me up at night. You're not going to believe what he did next. The day after everything came crashing down, the house felt cold. Not physically, but emotionally. My husband barely spoke to me. He wasn't angry in the loud, dramatic way you might expect. It was worse than that, he was quiet. Distant. I tried to talk to him, to explain that I didn't know what Caleb was talking about, but he just looked at me like he didn't recognize who I was anymore. That hurt more than anything. I kept asking myself what Caleb could have possibly said to make things go so wrong. What kind of lie did he tell? I hadn't done anything. I'd been careful. I kept my distance once things started to feel strange. But still, I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe I'd ignored too many signs. Maybe just being too kind, too trusting, had opened the door to this whole mess. And now, somehow, I was the one paying for it. Later that evening, I finally got a chance to see the message. My husband had printed it out, as if holding it in his hands would make it more real. It was from Caleb, sent late at night, saying things that made it sound like we had a relationship, like we'd been keeping secrets. It mentioned moments that did happen, but twisted them just enough to change their meaning. A look in the kitchen while we were cooking. A conversation on the porch one evening when the sun was going down. Things I remembered, yes, but not like that. Not in the way Caleb made them sound. That's when it really hit me. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was intentional. I tried to call Caleb, but he wouldn't answer. I sent messages, hoping he'd explain himself, hoping this was just some horrible prank or mistake. But all I got was silence. My stomach was in knots. I didn't know if he was doing this out of some twisted sense of revenge or something else entirely. I started to wonder if I'd missed who he really was all along. As the days passed, my husband grew more distant. He stopped sharing meals with me. He spent more time at his daughter's house, Caleb's mom. I wasn't welcome there anymore. I could feel it in the way no one returned my calls, how my invitations to family dinners suddenly went unanswered. One by one, everyone started pulling away. And all of it was happening without me even getting the chance to defend myself. I thought about confronting Caleb in person. I even drove to his place once, but when I got there, I couldn't bring myself to knock on the door. I sat in my car for nearly an hour, trying to find the courage, trying to figure out what I'd even say. But the words wouldn't come. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of knowing how much it was affecting me. Or maybe I was just scared of what else he might say. I started digging through everything, texts, old photos, emails, anything that could prove my side of the story. But nothing seemed solid enough. He hadn't done anything obvious, nothing that could be pointed to as false on paper. That's what made this so terrifying. He knew exactly how to bend the truth just enough to make people doubt me. Then, one night, I received a letter. No return address. Handwritten. The moment I saw the first line, I felt a chill run down my spine. It was from Caleb. And what he wrote inside. I still can't believe it's real. My hands were shaking as I opened the letter. Caleb's handwriting was rushed, uneven, like he had written it in a panic. The first few lines didn't make much sense. He kept going back and forth, saying he was sorry but also saying he didn't regret anything. Then, in one sentence, he claimed he never meant to hurt anyone, and in the very next, he blamed me for leading him on. That's when I knew for sure, this wasn't just confusion or miscommunication. Caleb had created his own version of events and convinced himself it was true. I read the letter over and over, hoping to find something solid, something I could show my husband that would finally prove I wasn't hiding anything. But the way it was written, it could still be interpreted both ways. And I think that's exactly what Caleb wanted. It was just vague enough to create doubt, just detailed enough to feel real. And the worst part? He said he didn't care what happened anymore. That the damage was already done. Like he was proud of it. I didn't know who to turn to. My husband didn't trust me. His daughter certainly wouldn't believe a word I said, not with her son feeding her this twisted story. I tried reaching out to my sister, someone who'd known me long before any of this, just to talk things through. She was supportive at first, but even she started sounding cautious, like she was walking on eggshells. I could tell she was wondering if maybe there was something more going on than I was admitting. That crushed me. The isolation was getting worse. That's when a new thought started creeping in, one I didn't want to believe. What if Caleb wasn't acting alone? What if this was part of something bigger? It started to make sense in a horrible way. The way his mom had suddenly turned cold. The timing of everything. How fast the family closed ranks. I began to wonder if this wasn't just Caleb trying to rewrite a story, but part of a plan to push me out. Maybe I was never truly accepted. Maybe they'd just been waiting for a reason. I started going through old family photos, looking for anything, any signs, any moments that I might have overlooked. And slowly, I started noticing things. The way Caleb always found excuses to be around me, yes, but also the way his mother watched us. The way she'd ask strange, leading questions later, like she was fishing for something. I had ignored it all because I wanted so badly to feel like I belonged. Now, I wasn't sure what was worse, the betrayal itself, or realizing that I had walked straight into it, blind and trusting. And still, I had no idea what Caleb was planning next. Days turned into weeks, and the silence in the house only grew heavier. My husband still wouldn't look me in the eye. Every time I tried to speak, he'd either walk away or change the subject. The only thing he ever asked now was, "Why didn't you just tell me the truth?" And I didn't know how to answer that, because I was telling the truth, and somehow, it still wasn't enough. But something shifted one afternoon. I was going through the closet, trying to distract myself, when I found an old phone my husband used to use. He hadn't touched it in years, but curiosity got the best of me. I charged it up, not expecting much, but then I saw something, the photos. Screenshots. Messages from Caleb. Some were deleted, but not all. There was one, in particular, that made my blood run cold. A message Caleb sent to a friend, saying, "She's gonna regret messing with me. Watch." It was dated just days before everything blew up. My heart pounded. I finally had something concrete. But I also realized just how far Caleb was willing to go. This wasn't just a misunderstanding anymore. This was a setup. Carefully planned, and executed like some twisted game. I printed the messages, not knowing what I'd do with them yet. Part of me wanted to run straight to my husband, slam them on the table, and scream, "See? This is the truth." But another part of me was terrified. Because if this didn't change his mind, if he still didn't believe me, I knew I'd be completely alone. Then, just as I was trying to decide what to do next, I heard a knock at the door. Not the front door, the back one. The one only family ever used. I froze. I knew that knock. It was Caleb. I stood there, staring at the door, unable to move. Why was he here? What else could he possibly want from me now? My heart raced as the knock came again, slow, steady, like he wasn't in a hurry. Like he knew I was standing just inches away. And then, he called out my name. Quietly. Calmly. That was the moment I realized this wasn't over. Not even close. I stood frozen, staring at the door, my mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. What did he want now? Why was Caleb here? I had already seen enough to know he was behind this mess, but the calm in his voice, so sure, so confident, unnerved me. I hesitated, unsure of whether to face him or stay hidden in the shadows of the house. The door creaked, and I heard his footsteps on the porch. He wasn't leaving. I didn't know what was worse, the fact that I could hear him so clearly or the fact that I knew he expected me to answer. I finally moved, slowly, almost against my will, and opened the door. Caleb was standing there, his hands casually in his pockets, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. It didn't feel like an apology was coming. "What do you want?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. But I could hear the tremor, the uncertainty, betraying me. He looked me over, as if weighing whether I was worth talking to. "I think you and I need to have a real conversation," he said, his voice smooth, too calm. "About everything." "About what?" I snapped, feeling the pressure building in my chest. "About your lies? About the message you sent? Or maybe you want to tell me how much you've ruined my life?" Caleb didn't flinch. Instead, his eyes darkened, and for the first time, I saw something other than that smooth, practiced charm, something more dangerous. "You're right. I didn't tell you everything," he said. "But it's not just me. There's someone else involved. Someone you're going to want to hear from." My heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "It's not just about me and you. It's about your husband, too." I didn't understand. My husband was already in the middle of all this, wasn't he? But Caleb's next words hit like a punch to the gut. "You'll find out soon enough. It's all connected." My mind raced. What did Caleb mean? Was my husband really involved in this twisted game? My stomach dropped as the truth hit me. There was more to this than I ever imagined. The real shock? It wasn't just a betrayal from Caleb. There was something darker lurking, and it was only beginning to surface. My heart pounded as Caleb's words echoed in my mind. "It's about your husband, too." I stood there, speechless, trying to piece it all together. What was he saying? Was my husband involved? Caleb took a step closer, his face expressionless now, like he was delivering news I wasn't supposed to hear. "You're not the only one being played here," he said softly. "Your husband, he's known about all of this." I couldn't breathe. "What do you mean?" My voice barely came out. "You're telling me he knew?" Caleb nodded slowly, his eyes cold. "He's the one who pushed me to do it. All of it." The shock hit me like a wave. Everything I'd feared, all the questions I'd had, suddenly came rushing into focus. My husband had orchestrated this? But why? Why would he turn against me like this? Why would he do that? I whispered, more to myself than to Caleb. "Because," Caleb said, his voice barely a whisper now, "he wanted you out. He never wanted you to be part of this family. It was his plan all along. I was just helping him finish it." The ground seemed to slip away beneath me. I felt dizzy, sick to my stomach. My husband, the man I thought I knew, had been playing me all along, setting me up to look guilty. It wasn't just Caleb who betrayed me. It was my own husband. But just as I was about to demand more answers, I heard a noise behind me. A familiar voice called out my name. "My husband." I turned around, and there he was, standing in the doorway, his face pale. "It's true," he said, almost emotionless. "I never wanted you here." Then, before I could say anything, he dropped the bombshell, "But Caleb didn't want me either." And that's when I realized the true betrayal had yet to come. I couldn't process his words at first. My husband didn't want me here, but Caleb didn't want him either? My head spun as the truth slowly sank in. It was all a tangled web, a family drama I never could have imagined. But before I could ask another question, my husband's voice broke the silence again. "Caleb, he's been blackmailing me for months. I thought I could handle it. I thought I could fix it, but I was wrong." His eyes were hollow, as if he'd aged 10 years in the span of a few moments. "I never meant for it to get this far. I'm sorry." Caleb's smirk finally faded, and for the first time, he looked almost vulnerable. "I didn't want it to go this way either. But your husband made it clear what he wanted. I just gave him what he asked for." The realization hit me hard. This wasn't just betrayal, it was a manipulation I couldn't fully grasp. Caleb had used my trust, my vulnerability, to drive a wedge between me and my husband, but it was my husband who had pulled the strings from the beginning. He'd let his fears, his insecurities, push him into something unspeakable. And now, standing in front of me, both of them seemed broken in their own ways. Caleb had pushed me to the edge, and my husband had let me fall, all to save his own pride. I took a deep breath, feeling both exhausted and relieved. The truth had come out, and with it, the painful realization that sometimes, the hardest battles are fought with the people you love. But I also knew one thing: I was done being a pawn. This chapter was over, and I was ready to write my own ending.